Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Taylors of Tech on Twitch. Got a bit of a weird one because, as you know, I do my best to kind of separate the tech stuff from the EV stuff, but sometimes they intermix, and that's why I was somewhat interested to talk about today's subject, which is Kevin Lynch. I am sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I believe it's Lynch, but let me just say from the beginning, actually, Kevin has done a great job with the Apple Watch. Like, honestly, he's been the chief of the Apple Watch for many, many years now. I remember watching him in Apple events way back in the early days, and the way they've been able to utilize watchOS for the hardware has been incredible, and the way the Apple Watch has dominated the market is just fantastic. So I love my Apple Watch. I've briefly gone back and a few times tried to see what it was like to go without wearing it again, and it honestly, I felt weird. I felt naked without it. So it's just I'm just not used to not having my Apple Watch anymore, and I think that Kevin has done a great job in his position with maintaining the Apple Watch and making it better, and priorities, and figuring out what it needs and what it doesn't. And there were a lot of things people assumed smartwatches would require, or a lot of things people were thinking, oh, this is what a smartwatch needs. It needs a circular display, or it needs a multi-day, year-long battery life, or whatever it is, the crazy battery lives. And Kevin figured out exactly what the Apple Watch needed for it to take over and for it to for people to enjoy it. And I'm sure that he's going to continue doing a great job with it. But on a more interesting note, this report comes from Business Insider. The inside look at business makes sense. I don't like these ads, so I'm going to do this. But several sources told Business Insider that Apple has been called on to help lead the Apple Car project. I don't know what their exact phrasing there is, but Kevin Lynch, who is well known for overseeing work on the Apple Watch, is set to take a role leading the development of the Apple Car, which I know this is a bit EV related, but you guys also like Apple. Okay, so this is like perfect. This caters to both audiences. Apparently, Apple Car development is overseen by someone else called John Gianandrea. Sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing that too. Who is Apple's AI and machine learning chief, who took over the reins from Bob Mansfield after Mansfield retired in 2020. There's been so many people looking over this Apple Car project. It goes way, way back. In fact, I remember Bloomberg talking about it way back in 2015. There were talks of Apple working on the car. But Lynch used to work at Adobe and helped create the Creative Cloud suite, which I'm less impressed with, I guess, overall. But he's worked on Apple's healthcare strategy team, and he has a very diverse background. They're saying his title will not change, and he'll be continued to be involved with both the Apple Watch and Apple's health initiatives, but he is stepping back from Jeff Williams' healthcare staff and will be replaced by Director of Health Software Engineering Evan Dole. And they went on to mention, which I thought was interesting because I don't really think they're close to mass production, but they went on to mention Apple is now at a stage where it is sourcing components, talking with suppliers, and making deals with manufacturing partners for the Apple Car, requiring more hands-on help from experienced executives within Apple. See, if they're still changing heads like this and giving Kevin Lynch power, I don't personally believe they're close to mass production. But the reason I wanted to talk about this was just because I think that the EV space is so fascinating, and it's really picking up steam between different startups like Lucid and Rivian. They're facing delays, and they haven't gotten their vehicles delivered yet, but Tesla has kind of shown the market what electric vehicles can become, and I would love to see Apple enter this market because they share so many dang similarities with Tesla as is. So finding a market where Apple and Tesla would actually go head-to-head with each other in terms of software, in terms of safety, self-driving technology, battery technology, interior design, how Apple would design a car and what types of things they would leave out and go all futuristic with. I just think it would be such a fascinating battle, mainly because I'm a huge fan of Apple. I love their design ethos. I love how simple they try to make things and how eager they are to remove certain things. And I complain about Apple a lot with different design approaches and different software limitations. I know, but ultimately I'm still mainly upset with Apple or complaining about Apple because they're my team. You know, that they're my home base. This is what I want my tech products to be like. And I love my iPhone. I love my iPad Pro. I love my iMac, and I love my AirPods. And I just want them to be better. I want this ecosystem to grow. I want it to be stronger, and I want Apple to have even better products than they currently have, which is why sometimes I'm disappointed. You know, I'm an Apple sheep because I follow them everywhere, but the sheep still strays from the path from time to time. You know, sometimes the sheep finds its own way and it finds a path that it thinks is better, and ultimately I still follow the shepherd. You know, if Apple says we're gonna get rid of the Today view on the iPad, and you're gonna have to like it, and you're gonna have to get comfortable not having all your apps in Today view and widgets on the same layout that you're comfortable with, then I go, okay, and I'm the sheep that still follows because I love my iPad, so I'm not willing to ditch it, but at the same time, I'm going to be a little noisy and I'm going to be a cranky along the way. And I think that the electric vehicle space is going to be far more fascinating than any product category over the next 10 years that Apple's currently in. You know, I think that we've kind of started maturing in a lot of the different categories Apple's currently in. Between Mac development, we're switching away from Intel. We're using our own silicon, and once this whole transition is complete, I don't really see a lot of changes year after year. You know, we're going to be getting mini LED and more legacy ports coming back, and we're going to have amazing, super fast, super efficient silicon by, I think most of that transition will be done by the end of this year. iPhones, I feel like, are getting so stagnant with upgrades, and there's so little changes that there's just going to be less and less to talk about year after year. The Apple Watch is also maturing, figuring out exactly what a smartwatch is good at, and not really sure what to do with much else. And as I've ranted about countless times on here, I want the iPad Pro to be better. I want the iPad Pro to grow and become more of a pro tool and not so much of a media consumption device that has slightly different biometrics between the lineup. You know, I wanted it to get better software, and Apple just doesn't see it that way. Out of all these different genres that Apple's interested in, I genuinely feel like the electric vehicle space is going to just change so radically. And I would love for Apple, as such a big, such an influential tech company with, what is it now, like a $2.5 trillion market cap. It's insane how much money and resources Apple has access to, and I think their design and way of simplifying things and making it easy for consumers to understand is just such a wonderful thing that I'm so happy exists, because I've yet to find a lot of the Apple ecosystem design style outside of it. So to see them go into the car would be weird, right? Because Apple's not designed something like this before. They've not really gone down this path of actually making a vehicle with tires that people get inside. You know, there's no Apple product we get inside, unless maybe you count the Apple Store as being a product of some kind. But as Tesla has shown a lot of the industry, that vehicles can now become just as reliant and just as important to software as hardware. And there's big differences between vehicles based on the OS and based on the charger network. And I think that Apple has the potential, with their design philosophy and their resources, they have the potential to make a really compelling option that would go right up against Lucid, I think, and probably up against Tesla a little bit. But at the same time, it's just been leaked. It's just been rumored for so long, and there's just been so much talk of Apple working on a car. And I ultimately think that Apple's arrogance and Apple's not willingness to build their own manufacturing facilities is going to prevent them from wanting to make a car. I bet that after all these reports we got from Bloomberg and Business Insider and all that, I'm no doubt in my mind, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm 100% certain there's a car being worked on between the patents they've filed and the employees they've hired. Elon Musk even referenced it when talking about Apple Car and talking about how their competition would be pretty direct with Tesla's. I can almost say confidently Apple is working on a car. But there's a big difference, especially with Apple, between working on something and actually planning on releasing something. And I think Apple's been working on a car for potentially a decade now. There's been all kinds of development and patents and research and development going into figuring out exactly how they want the doors to work, and exactly how they want the batteries to work and all that. So I'm worried that because the mass production process of electric vehicles is very difficult to do profitably and very complicated, that's going to scare Apple away from ever releasing one because they're too worried to go into the world of EV production where profit margins are very, very thin, and you have to kind of be very vertically integrated like Tesla to make a vehicle with good range that's price competitive. And because Apple doesn't seem to do that with their current electronics, they'd probably, similar to their other product categories, they would likely look at the Apple Car as like, we're not trying to make the most popular vehicle. We're just trying to make the best vehicle. And I think that ultimately will prohibit them from making any kind of Model 3 or Model Y competition, and they'll just be too fascinated into going into the luxury auto market, luxury sedan, something like a Lucid Air or something like a Model S or a Mercedes. What did I say? Mercedes or a Mercedes EQS. Stuff like that, I think, is what Apple's probably far more interested in. And I would be very, very curious, just as a big Apple fan and as an EV enthusiast and someone who believes in electric vehicles. I believe they're the future, and I try to tell as many people about them as I can and how they're getting better and how good the range is getting and all that. I just wish that Apple would make affordable EVs, but right now it's just not even confirmed that they can make a normal EV. But knowing them, they'd probably make the AirPods Max of electric vehicles and start really high and that kind of thing. Byron is saying, I know I've argued directly with Byron in many streams in the past. Apple will make the bestest, that's a real word, the bestest interior of any car. Tesla will still lead self-driving and powertrain tech, etc., but I don't know why I really trust Apple with the interior and interior tech and displays, etc. I think it would be fascinating because every time I think about how Apple would design an interior, it comes insanely close to how Tesla would do it. You know? Yeah, I'm an EV evangelist. I'm an evangelist. I don't know how to say that, but yes, EV evangelist. Speaking of interiors, apparently Marquez, people were talking about this in the chat, so I figured I'd throw it up here as well. Looks like Marquez finally got his hands on the refreshed Model S. I'm guessing, yeah, he got the badge right there. That's an exclusive. Okay, so for those who don't know, this badge only comes on the first 25 Plaid Model S's delivered, which means he got his hands on an early model. If you weren't at the delivery event, it just says the word Plaid on the back. It doesn't have that. But yeah, Marquez should be doing an autofocus episode on that soon, which is cool. But whenever I think of Apple designing their own car, I think of it being minimal and going all in on a display and having a huge emphasis on software. And that's just so much of what Tesla already does. And that's the other thing that makes me wonder if Apple would be hesitant to ever actually build the cars. They feel like they can't really add much or change much to what's already been present. And there's a lot of infrastructure Apple would have to pay for up front. You know, I believe I've talked about this before, but it's been a while, so I'll kind of repeat myself a little bit here. Electric vehicles, especially vehicles in general, even if you weren't making an electric car, are very difficult to make profitably. If you look at how much money all of these auto companies in the country burn through cash, and electric vehicles in particular, there's very few. I'm trying to think of one outside of Tesla that has proven to be profitable. A startup electric car company that's been profitable. I don't think there is one outside of Tesla. And Apple has a lot of money, so they definitely have the resources to actually build, service centers. And I don't even think that you could retrofit Apple stores to support Apple Car deliveries because so many of them are like in malls and stuff. And you need to have like a big open parking lot with vehicles ready to be parked and delivered and stuff. So they would have to spend a ton of money up front in order to actually make these things. And I personally just think Apple doesn't have the guts. And Tim Cook is doing a safe business model, but it's not an interesting one. He's trying to pivot Apple to become more of a services company and rely more on recurring software revenue like Apple TV Plus and Arcade and that kind of thing. And that can piggyback on top of their existing products pretty well. But it's safe to say the Apple car is just such a massive departure from everything else they've ever developed. It would definitely be the biggest leap. You know, even in Apple's past, they started with desktop computers, and then we went into laptops, and then, okay, so you got mobile computers, and then that transitioned into iPods, which are pretty different, but still somewhat same category. You have a mobile computer that has files, and you play music on it. And then iPods turn into iPhones, and then iPhones turn into iPads, and they kept working on desktops and laptops along the way. The jump to car... yes, it has a battery and it has a screen, but it's just the market it serves is so drastically different. It would be the biggest leap Apple would ever make. And we also got watches, but I still think even the watches shared a lot in common with iPods and stuff. Let's see. Remember that one time there was the guy in the chat who said he was watching you using Starlink on his yacht? I think about that often. Do you think it was a faker? I don't think you can do that yet, but maybe. Let's see. I don't think Apple will copy Tesla. It will be radically different. I don't know how it can be radically different because everything has kind of been attempted. You've got your Lucids out there that are trying to go all in on the driver experience, and then you have your Teslas of the world that are trying to go all in on software. And I'm trying to imagine a different direction Apple could take it, and I can't really envision one. McJuggy Nuggets, that's a fun name. He says, I think it would probably be like HomePod type thing, super expensive, then that model dies, and then a new, more affordable model. Maybe. It's difficult to make EVs profitable, so I don't think it'll be as simple to just reduce the price of the EV with economies of scale over time like they did with the HomePod Mini. Thank you for the bits, Keopsis. Yeah, if you DM me and remind me your YouTube username at a different time. I'm really busy right now, so I haven't had the time to go into find the list in YouTube Studio. YouTube Studio rearranged where everything is. I got to find where they put the muted people and figure out why you're there. But I'm just trying to exactly figure out how Apple could differentiate themselves. I mean, obviously, you're looking at some heavily modified version of CarPlay. I think if they went the expensive route, it would flop. I'm not as convinced. I feel like there's a huge market of Apple enthusiasts, and there's a lot of rich people that definitely use Apple products that have a ton of money. Not that all iPhone users or everybody who buys the latest iPhone is also going to buy a six-figure sedan. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the people who do buy six-figure sedans, who do buy really expensive luxury cars, a lot of them have iPhones and Apple Watches and AirPods that they're probably big fans of, and they, Apple sold the Apple Watch Edition, and they probably, similar to the Mac Pro wheels, they want to be looked at as a luxury brand. So I could totally understand Apple wanting to start with a luxury product, very similar to Lucid. So starting at the high end and working your way down is just a common practice in the EV world. That's what Tesla is doing. That's what Lucid is doing. That's what Rivian's doing. And I'm sure that will be the running theme with a lot of different EVs in the future. But I think Bieber's the only person who bought Fiskars. I don't know much about Fisker, but apparently they're around. I don't know how profitable they are, but I don't know. I don't know. It would be cool if they could get the price down, because I just think if I could sit down and talk to Tim Cook, even off the record, not for a podcast, and not, I could sign an NDA that says I'm not allowed to talk about what goes on in the interview, and I could just sit down to Tim, man to man, no cameras, no microphones or anything, and just say, look, this is where the future of technology is going, and this is going to be a huge industry. Millions of people spending tens of thousands of dollars on these vehicles that are going to be really dependent on how good the range is, how good the powertrains are, how good the software is. And I know we're long past the point of Apple being first on this market, right? We're long past the point of Apple beating Tesla to the punch on anything, really, at this point. I think that Tesla's already shown how many vehicles they're able to sell, and their vehicles still aren't really that cheap necessarily. They're cheaper than they were a long time ago, but Model 3 and Model Y are selling like crazy, and they're still kind of pricey vehicles for the average person. So Tesla's already hard at work at lowering their prices even further within the next few months. Not months, but years. So when Apple gets involved, which I am not sure they will, I still think that they're going to be too hesitant and too timid to enter this space. They're going to not know how to make it different, and they're not going to know how to do it profitably, so they're just going to toy around with it in the R&D department. But if I could talk to Tim, I would be like, in the short term, this is going to be risky. Okay, you're going to have to front a lot of money for manufacturing. You're going to have to spend a lot of money on service centers and delivery centers, and maybe even your own charger network. I don't think if you're planning long term, this would be a good idea. But I'm like, Apple, you want to design the technology of the future, right? Imagine what the biggest noticeable difference is going to be in technology within the next 30 or 40 years. It's going to be cars. There's going to be tons more electric cars than there are now. There's going to be charger networks replacing all kinds of gas stations, and there's going to be more self-driving tech that gets better and better. You want to be in this market. You want to have presence in it. You want to have weight in it. You want to have a user base in it. And you want to have some things that no one else has. And I would say the sooner you can get that product out, and the sooner you can start working on lowering the prices of your batteries and getting good range for a low price, and actually start having Model 3 and Model Y competition, which I don't believe the first Apple car would be. I'm predicting it would be six figures. But everyone would be talking about it. Apple has this incredible marketing power. They're very, very well known. And doesn't matter what they release, everyone in the YouTube community starts talking about them. Everyone in the tech community starts talking about them, simply for being, one of the biggest companies on earth. People know Apple, whether they like them or they hate them. They're influential, and they dictate a lot of what the market does. So I personally think Apple's already way too late on this, and I think that they're far too late to have any type of advantage over Tesla, where Tesla would actually be competing with them and be in trouble. And right now, the best shot Apple has is capturing a small niche of the market and hoping that there's some diehard Apple enthusiasts with tons of money to spend in the six-figure department. But I think they should act on it sooner rather than later. But in the long term, if they do have the eventual vision of making the cars cheaper and more affordable and working really well within the Apple ecosystem, although I don't exactly know how much will change, like what CarPlay already kind of allows you to incorporate your vehicle into your ecosystem pretty smoothly. So they've got to be thinking about this type of stuff and finding ways of going up against Tesla. But there's certain things I just really have a hard time. Like, I could see it as almost being possible that Apple would make a six-figure sedan that's really well built, and the interior quality is amazing, and the software is really smooth and elegant, and the display has 120 hertz and mini LED, and just it's really, really sweet interior. But it's expensive. Something I have a very hard time imagining, even if Apple got into the car business, was Apple making a truck. Can you imagine that? Can you guys picture for a second Apple building their own pickup? I just don't see it. I just have a really hard time imagining that going anywhere. Would it be the most luxurious, fancy truck in the world? Because, yeah, that's not going to work. Speaking of Tim, wonder why he hasn't done an interview with MKBHD yet. Seems like everyone else has. Yeah, I think that would be great. I want Tim to do more interviews. I think, yeah. Byron says, I think they don't have a choice. Cars are the next big computing platform, along with AR glasses. Apple really doesn't want to lose screen time to Tesla. Personally, yeah, I agree that they don't want to lose screen time to Tesla. I just think it's too late, personally. I think that Tesla's already moving incredibly fast, and they show no signs of slowing down when it comes to ramping batteries, lowering prices, working on more models, working on cheaper models. And the fact that Apple simply doesn't have their own factory yet puts them at a significant disadvantage, let alone they haven't announced an Apple car yet. They're just years behind, and the quickest route to success if Apple does want to have weight in the auto game. I think I've mentioned this before, but it's just buy out one of the small guys, probably Lucid. I feel like Lucid Air aligns pretty closely with Apple's philosophy of design and luxury and premium quality. And similar to them buying Beats, if they just bought out Lucid before they got their cars to market and said, okay, we're taking over the software team and we're going to maybe tinker the interior a bit to make it up to our liking or emphasize car OS or that kind of thing. That way they wouldn't have to buy land and build their own factory from the ground up, and they would already have a lot of gears turning in the EV space already. Sorry for the lag. Starlink's looking for a dish. Steering wheel sold separately. Exactly, because it drives itself. You don't need a steering wheel. I don't know how to pronounce this, but Kagkin29 asked how much the Model 2 will cost. So the Model 2 is not the official name, but I know what you're referring to. The smaller Model 3 is according to Tesla, it's supposed to start around $25,000. But keep in mind that Tesla has almost never hit their advertised starting price. So I think it's important when EV companies are talking about price points of vehicles that you keep in mind inflation, for one. The value of the dollar drops a lot, so the prices of things goes up. And think more in ballpark territory, because the Model 3 has almost never been $35,000, and the Model Y has never been $39,000, despite that's what they unveiled them to be. So with the Model 2, probably expect it to be sub $30,000 starting. There might be some trims and options that go above that, but I know they say that the price will get to 25. But I would anticipate them to be a little bit too optimistic on that. So I would say that when it does come out, it'll probably be under $30,000. I don't know how much under, but it'll fluctuate just like Tesla prices do now, depending on what suppliers are charging and what's going on in the world and how much demand there is. They raise the price typically when the demand's too high because they're like, well, we can't meet demand, so we got to slow down orders somehow. So they raise the price. So if they get the Model 2 under $30,000, I'm sure it'll sell insanely good. Factor in the cost of maintenance being a lot lower, not having to pay for oil changes, brake pad replacements, gas, and no transmission to go bad, no radiator to go bad. There's all kinds of things. No, Neum, I can't even tell you how out of the loop you are. They don't accept Bitcoin anymore, and inflation does matter very much. That's why Tesla's prices went up. That and supply chains. Apple is a luxury item, I agree. If Apple Glass can be a thing, Apple doesn't need a car. A glass will supersede a car as it can be worn all the time. Pikachu, are you joking? You gotta be trolling. You're telling me augmented reality will change the need for transportation? You won't need to move anywhere in the world because you'll have augmented reality. Yeah, Tesla removed the Bitcoin option like months ago. It's been a while. It would be great if Apple bought Lucid. Apple has already hired many Tesla executives and engineers. I know they would love all the ex-Tesla people Lucid has. Yeah, Lucid, I don't know. They seem to be struggling to get their stuff together. You know, they kept saying, delivery's going to be here, now they're going to be here. And then after the last earnings call I listened to, it didn't seem super promising. So they might need a big $1 trillion company to step in and say, we'll take it from here. Just pretend you're in a car. I don't see how the Apple Car would integrate into the ecosystem much differently than CarPlay already does. We have Car Key, that's a thing, where you walk up to the car and it unlocks, which Tesla has had for years. So you hold your phone up to the car and it unlocks, and then when you get in the car, we have wireless CarPlay now, so you can have Apple Maps and Apple Music and your messages show up. So I don't really know what else it can do. What would the Apple Car have necessarily that CarPlay vehicles wouldn't? This is another issue I have with Apple making their own car, is I don't know of a huge difference they could make. I could definitely see them specializing more on the software on the inside. And yeah, like Gawkster's saying, I don't believe Apple will do an actual car. I bet Apple is working on Car OS. Any certified car can use Car OS instead of whatever bespoke abomination they come up with. Yeah, I could see that happening where Apple kind of streamlines the operating system and the experience on the inside of the vehicle and starts getting into more autonomous driving stuff. That would likely result in Apple partnering with someone. That way they don't have to take the risks of building their own factories and building their own manufacturing lines and having to buy batteries and stuff. They let someone else do all the hard work, and then they just show up at the last second and say, okay, this is all the great software. That way they feel like they're kind of involved in the car market, but not really. Maybe they share location in real time with iMessage. Can't you already do that with your phone, though? You just share ETA? Does CarPlay not have share ETA? I don't know. I have never owned a car with CarPlay. If so, that's a really small... Yeah, I would trash on CarPlay. A lot of people seem to like it. Apple won't just put a tablet in a car. An Apple product that engulfs you will be an experience. Well, yeah, it sounds great idea-wise, but real world, what does that look like? If it's more than just slapping a tablet. CarPlay is just sidecar for iOS. Yeah, pretty much. Apple always have done their own hardware. Not necessarily. There's some things Apple, like they've started supporting AirPlay and HomeKit on third-party devices. Now they're putting Siri on third-party hardware. And they originally did an iTunes flip phone. So they used to design software and make services and stuff for non-Apple hardware. They make their own Apple TV box, but they don't make their own TV panels. I think might be a good example of that. Apple wants to control the guts of the TV, but they don't want to make an actual TV. That box requires third-party hardware. It's about the technology which will replace the phone. If you control that, you will rule the world. That's why I think Apple Glass should be the main focus. I don't think you'll rule the world if you come up with the technology that will replace the phone. My other disagreement is I don't think that Apple Glass will replace the phone. I think it'll be like the Apple Watch, and it will allow for great additional experiences and software, but it's not going to, it's missing, fundamentally, it's missing major like the keyboard is going to be a lot harder to emulate, and the social aspect of wearing glasses and reaching out in front of you is not going to be super socially accessible. You also can't replace FaceTime very well with Apple Glass because you have to, you can't see someone's face. It's not going to be a great camera replacement, especially for selfies, which are probably the most common form of picture taking is here's where I am or here's where I am with other people. You can't really do that with glasses or it's just going to be awkward. And the Apple glasses, I'm sure, have been on Apple's drawing board, and I'm sure they've been focusing on them for years. It's just the technology is not proven to be ready yet. There's a couple augmented reality glasses out there, but they're very expensive, very clunky, and they have terrible battery life, and they're not very immersive. And I imagine Apple might have something a little bit better than that, but it's still safe to say the tech isn't ready yet. Whereas the Apple Car thing is like, those exist. Electric vehicles are out. I've driven them. They're real, and they're practical and functional, and there's hundreds of thousands, now millions of people buying electric vehicles. So this is not some hypothetical future tech that doesn't exist yet. Augmented reality is slowly transitioning into more of a real piece of technology, but it's still got a long ways to go before it's feasible. But it would not replace the phone, and it would definitely not replace the car. I'm afraid you have augmented reality severely misunderstood if you think it's some kind of vehicle replacement. That doesn't make sense. The iPhone will enter car mode the second you get in the car. Okay, but what is car mode? CarPlay is just iOS and the trash screens in non-Tesla cars. Yeah, but even Porsches have pretty nice displays on the inside that run CarPlay. Selfies are no longer, hey, it's where I am. It's mostly just, hey, it's me. Yeah, but still, you wouldn't be able to do that well with glasses. People want something to do with their eyes. That's why the Bluetooth earpieces didn't take off as much as they did. They're very practical, but people still wanted a physical phone that they could look at and text. And, it's a social aspect of things that didn't work out. You'd love CarPlay. I recently got a new car at the beginning of this year, and let me just say it's amazing. I dislike car manufacturers' car operating systems. I'm surprised that they let Apple and Google go in their cars instead of forcing people to use their own car OS. Well, it's funny to me because they probably realized that it's way too expensive and way too complicated for them to develop their own OS that people like. It's much easier to just let other companies that are good at designing software do it. They're like, yeah, if Apple wants to optimize it so that it works with people's phones, let them do it. That way we don't have to spend a bunch of money working on trying to make a really good OS and a good music streaming service and a service that syncs with iMessage really well so that your texts come through and all that. So like, yeah, just let Apple do it. But Tesla actually has the resources and the people dedicated to software that I don't personally think they need Android Auto or CarPlay because the OS is that good. But I agree. On most automakers, CarPlay and Android Auto is the way to go. That's a smart move on their part, like, I've seen Ford try to make their own OS. I've seen VW's OS. I've seen Porsche's OS. It's like, okay, yeah, you tried. Good job. So long as maps are accurate and up to date, I don't need CarPlay. Yeah, having driven and been in Teslas many times myself, I can't envision a way that you could implement CarPlay into those that it would work well. I think what I like about Apple is they design the hardware and the software, and when you have those meshing together and working really well, you have a great experience. And that's what Tesla did. They've designed the hardware and the software to work together. And if you started throwing Apple software on Tesla hardware, it would just get clunky really quickly. Let's see. The Snapchat glasses were revolutionary. Now nobody cares about them. Well, the first few generations of spectacles were just cameras. They weren't augmented reality glasses, which is not what Apple Glass would be. But Snapchat has now started getting into augmented reality, but it's not mass production. You have to be it's kind of like Google Glass. Not anybody can buy them. You have to be like invited to buy them, and the performance of them I've heard so far is not that good. Like the battery life sucks, and the resolution's not very good, and it's a low refresh rate. So it's not ready yet. Augmented reality is still being worked on. I'm sure Apple's working on it, and it's still not ready for prime time. Despite what leakers may have told you. Keep in mind, last year there were people saying, oh yeah, it'll be out by April or March. Yeah, that didn't happen. I think Apple Car will be like Apple TV. Apple won't make the whole thing from scratch, just make the brains which can control the car. Will have a bigger market and easier to make / distribute. I could see that happening a lot easier than them building their own car from the ground up, despite what people say. Apple wants to do all their own hardware. It's like, yeah, but do they? To a certain extent, they're like, we're going to let LG or Samsung make the TVs, but we'll make the TV brains with tvOS, and we'll just start porting AirPlay and HomeKit over to third parties, and they do a lot of things to avoid making their own TVs, and I think that that's not as complicated as making your own car. So I could easily see them saying, let's let someone else make the car, and then we'll just control the computer and the software, maybe using our own silicon, and maybe even having a suite of cameras and sensors that can help with self-driving. Apple's going to have their own Apple Pilot that is similar to Tesla's full self-driving, and it uses cameras around the vehicle. And Apple has their own standard and their own full self-driving chip because Apple's designing their own silicon now. That I could almost see as being more likely. I just wish they would be acting on it sooner rather than later, because the longer they wait, the less market dominance they're going to have and the less brand reputation they're going to have, because the more Tesla dominates the market, the more people aren't going to be willing to switch. People don't upgrade their cars that often compared to phones and stuff. So, do you think we will see an Apple Watch SE2 this September? I don't think so. Most of what I've read says the SE is just going to stick around another year in its current state. Probably a Series 7, though. And man, I hope this Series 3 gets killed off. I don't know why they're still selling that, but thank you for the bits, Hakan. I'm still probably getting it wrong. The best thing Ford did was they're excluding Tesla, the EV competition. The Mach-E operating system is really nice and has route planning like Tesla. All the other EVs I've tried don't have that. I don't know. I've messed around with the Mach-E. I test drove it, and I was not impressed with the software myself. I don't like the dial. I don't like the portrait mode screen. I'm glad the Mach-E is selling well. In fact, the Mach-E is actually outselling normal Mustangs now, which isn't a surprise given it's a crossover, more practical than a two-door sports vehicle. But Tesla is the biggest competitor. So yeah, if you ignore the competition, I guess they're outselling the competition. But the lead Tesla has on forward is pretty dang high, to be honest. I see people are getting bored of rectangular touchscreens and want Apple or any other company to introduce an iPhone killer. What could that be? Dude, if someone knew, they would be on it already. No one really knows. I don't think we're going to have one for a long time. Augmented reality can assist the smartphone a lot, and it can add a lot of experiences, but I still don't see Apple Glass killing off a need for an iPhone. That's a misconception a lot of people had with the Apple Watch, is they thought that was going to replace the iPhone, and eventually you wouldn't need a phone anymore because you could just do everything on the watch. Yeah, that's not what happened. I don't think that's the way Apple sees it's going, and I don't think most people even could imagine a world where the Apple Watch just gets so good that the iPhone is pointless. It's like, no, you want a bigger screen to watch videos on or to take pictures on, and you want a good place for bigger battery life and easier to read. And you want a physical keyboard, not a physical keyboard, but, a bigger keyboard. You don't want to scribble everything. So I think the same way about glasses. It could change the way we use everything in the ecosystem, but I still don't see it replacing having a rectangular piece of glass that we take around with us for basic stuff. Too useful, too universal of a computing and communication device. Will have rectangular communicator for at least 100 years, I bet. I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but I actually agree with Gokster here. Maybe I'm just too arrogant and I don't have a good enough imagination, but I genuinely can't think of a piece of technology that will start to make phones obsolete within the next few decades. I think the closest possible thing could be like Neuralink, where we start implanting computers in our brains, but that's going to take so long to mass adopt and get people comfortable with and get the laws comfortable with, and we're so far away from that becoming anywhere near mainstream, decades away from that even. So I think the smartphone in its current form is probably here to stay for quite some time, and I don't think anything's going to threaten that. The biggest threat to the smartphone is itself. Smartphones are going to get better. They're going to, just like he said, they're going to get faster communication. He's like writing the stream for me. They're going to get better batteries, better screens, smaller notches. They'll get thinner. They'll get better cameras. But the fundamental use of them, I don't think will change much. Let's see. They hired a powertrain expert from Tesla, and that was important for Roadster and Semi, so they will probably design their powertrain, but sometimes someone else will make it. I don't know why, though. Mine burns every time I'm trying to figure out Apple's car plans. I'm not convinced. I think they're hiring a lot of Tesla people, but that's just for the initial prototype development. I don't think it's all about mass production yet. iPhone, yeah. So when it's time to update, it's almost impossible. It seems like they've gotten better, but I used to have to reset my watch to get rid of all cache files, then set up. I usually restored from backup because that's easier. Oh, I see what you're saying. Halami the Salami. He said, I have the Series 3 and the 8 gig of storage. In reality, says 4.2 gig capacity in settings. And after setting up with installing apps, there's barely over 2 gigs available. Yeah, I think it's 32 gigs on the Series 5 and later. But yeah, the Series 3, I don't know why they're still selling it. It's really bad, especially if you're just getting it now. My sister bought one recently on sale, and I was like, I didn't want to tell her not to get it, but I was like, oh, that's not going to age really well. You're going to try to get updates on that thing. It's probably going to brick itself. What are my thoughts on universal basic income? Wow, that's a big leap. I don't know. Do I want to get into that? I don't think it's a terrible idea, but I don't think it's a great one either, just because I know way too many people that would probably stop working. I'm already seeing that quickly become a problem. Like, this might get political. I don't want it to get political. I'm apolitical for the record here. I don't lean right or left. I don't follow politics much. I don't really pay attention to what presidents and stuff are going on about. Or laws that are getting pushed. I'm busy enough as it is. When I'm done working, I don't want to go look at politics. I typically just watch funny shows with my wife, or I go on mountain bike rides, or I go on adventures and go swimming. I can't be bothered with politics. But if we're getting into the nitty-gritty fundamental practice here, I think that universal basic income would result in a severe lack of people in the workforce, and that would result in there being less stuff and less things, and it would cause problems, which is already happening in a small scale with stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, which is good. I get that we need it. I'm not saying that was a bad idea, but this is one of the consequences of doing that when you start giving everybody money, is there are a lot of places where people have just stopped working and not gone back to work because they don't see a point. I know several people in my personal life that were in a situation where it was like, well, I can stay on unemployment and not work, and if I choose to go back to work, I'll make less money, plus I'll be working, which isn't fun. So why would I go back to work? And that results in there being lots of businesses and enterprise and factories or restaurants and stuff just going out of business. And on one hand, you could say, well, that's because those businesses, those restaurants are not offering competitive rates. They're not offering to pay people or give people enough incentives to work. So that's on them. They should be the ones paying more and offering better incentives for people. But the truth is, that's how you very quickly result in only major corporations existing. And then having a starting up your own business, especially a restaurant or a new company, you don't have a lot of excess capital to give people. So if your mindset of it is, well, that's okay because we just need better jobs. You need to offer better pay. You need to offer better things. And I get why people say that, but keep in mind, from the business's perspective, they can't always afford to offer those things that big major corporations can. Yeah, if you pay people for not working, they're not going to work. Exactly. And that's going to result in a lot of things not getting done, or a lot of people not seeing the point in working. And then there's less product, and there's less development, and there's less things moving forward. And what happens if you start saying that and you just say, well, okay, if you can't afford to pay someone $25 an hour with health benefits, then you shouldn't be offering a job. Now you're not going to have much new companies. You're going to have the big $1 trillion corporations that exist now, and there's not going to be much else because they're the only companies that can afford to pay people that much. And any new company that tries to start up is going to go bankrupt because they just can't afford to pay people that much. So you don't get new businesses. You just have giant corporations deciding what happens, and you just have chain restaurants. You don't have local restaurants, and you don't have local farmers anymore. You just have to have multi-billion-dollar corporations handling everything, which I've seen a lot of people not like big businesses for having too much control or too much power or too greedy. So I'm like, I don't know of a great solution here, which is why I think it's a controversial subject. Is like I think that it's a little more complicated than we should just have everyone get paid every month for free, whether they work or not. I agree on one side of that, it'll be really nice. In one dimension, if you just look at it one way, yeah, it'd be nice to not have to work and everyone just gets paid and they can pay the bills and eat their food. But for one, you would have rapid inflation. The value of money would drop a lot. The prices of things would rise a lot if all businesses knew that everybody was getting extra income every month for free. So that you would see the prices of things go way up, and then you would likely have everybody in the country asking for the UBI to be rose. Well, if it's not for free, everyone pays it through taxes. Well, the taxes are coming from somewhere. They're not coming. If you got to pay taxes, if everyone stops working because they don't see the point in working and they collect that money, that you got to pay taxes on that money, it kind of defeats the purpose of the income. Hecken says, I'm talking about like the technology side of universal basic income. Like, will AI be good enough for that? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. I know that the technology and automation will replace a lot of jobs, but I have still yet to believe that it's gotten to the point where there's no jobs. There are tons of places hiring all over the place. It's just people don't want those jobs because they're not fun or interesting. So I don't think AI is close to replacing all jobs. I think it's replacing some, but other ones pop up. Other new ones come and go. I don't think the problem is there not being enough jobs. personally. If foldables become so good that the folding aspect is not a compromise anymore, could that be the end of rectangular phones? I don't think it will be, because if you can find a way to make foldables just as much as normal phones, then you'll probably have also lowered the price of normal phones. So, and I also think that the process of folding is also an extra step that a lot of people won't like and want to switch to. So, like, even if the Z Flip was $700, I don't think that would kill off normal phone sales, just because people would rather, and that's half the price of what it is. Let's see. I don't know if I agree with what Niam's saying. I don't have super firm opinions on this. I just know that if you start giving everybody money for free, the prices of everything is going to skyrocket, and there's going to be a severe lack of workforce, and businesses will have to close because there's not enough people working, which results in that impacting everybody. You know, if we started giving everybody enough money to live comfortably because it's, you know, universal basic, then no one wants to build certain things. Or it's, you know, like Fremont, for example, if everybody quit, then no new cars would get built. And then that's a problem. Now we can't transition to a more sustainable future because we don't have enough people working on, you know, making new solar panels or making new technology, making new things that can make the world a better place. It can cause a problem pretty quickly. Let's see. Yeah, this is an economics discussion. We'll try not to get political, but it's easy to slip into that. That's a work institution problem. Work isn't rewarding enough. The economy is broken on the lowest end. Well, there's not. I think people underestimate. Like, I understand that minimum wage doesn't let you live very comfortably. I've worked a job that was below minimum wage, for the record, before YouTube. They didn't even pay me minimum wage there, and I was paying rent, but I had real cheap rent through my parents. But they were still charging me, and I can attest it's not easy to live on that, but I think it's because minimum wage jobs are not meant to be careers. They're meant to be stepping stones. I also think it's a good idea for young people to work a crappy job at a young age. It motivates you to want to strive to go somewhere better, to find a better job in the future. I don't think it's McDonald's or Taco Bell's responsibility to it was cash under the table. That's how they got away with it. It was people I knew. It wasn't like an official institution. It was like a local Mandarin ranch. It wasn't it wasn't official pay and everything. And it wasn't much under. It was probably 25, 50 cents an hour under. Yeah, they made me pay rent when I was 18. I think a little before that. But my point is, crappy jobs that don't pay very much, I think, teach a valuable lesson to people of how much money is worth when you start having to pay bills and you start having your own monthly expenses and you realize how much those things cost and how hard you have to work to make that much money. It's a good motivating factor to want to do something better. And I don't think that the minimum wage positions should be promising you a lifetime of riches and a career that's going to be able to support you and your kids and be able to pay for your kids' college just because you decided to work at Taco Bell for 35 years. I think that that's a stepping stone job. And if it's a job that doesn't require much training and doesn't require much expertise, then it's understandable as to why it doesn't pay very much, is because they can get anyone to do it. Jobs that pay well are looking for things that not anybody can do. So you have to kind of find your worth, find your value in society, find a way to contribute something meaningful that people are willing to pay for. And that's not easy. I think I'm overpaid. I don't think I think I make way more than I think lots of people could do what I do. But that's why there's, different trainings, and that's why dentists get paid a lot, for example. I was just talking to my dentist the other day with all the schooling and college he had to go through. Not anybody can do all that, go through all the training and pay for all the teaching and get into the experience of knowing what to look for in teeth and cavities. And I get why they get paid a lot, because not anyone can do that. But if you're just telling people to, take orders at a register, yeah, I can understand why that's not a high-paid gig. Anybody can do that. So if you don't feel like doing it, they'll find someone else who can. So it's understandable to me why that isn't a career job. That's not something that you'll be able to pay for life with for 30, 40 years. Let's see. Start at home for sweets. Yeah, a lot of people still live at home. I know a lot of people that still do live with their parents even when they get in their 20s and mid to late 20s. I thought anti-monopoly laws were here to get small businesses started. Now they're helping small businesses shut down. What's going on? It's complicated. I don't think there's an easy one. I'm not here to say this is how the world should work. This is how government should work. Normally, if you guys get me on some economy subject or some slightly political subject, I ultimately figure out why it's a complicated subject that's not easy. There's no easy answer to, because no matter what you choose, there's compromises and losses that I don't think are a good idea. Let's see. There are some people on Reddit who think $80,000 a year isn't enough. I'm seriously thinking schools need to start teaching economics and budgeting and financial literacy. It isn't enough depending on where you live. It could be plenty. It's all based on the cost of living where you are. Like if you were living where I am, out in a rural community that's not in a major city or anything, $80,000 is plenty. You could live on that. But if you were trying to live in the Bay Area, $80,000, you'd probably be homeless. You could barely afford to pay for a small studio at $80,000 a year. If you're not making six figures in the Bay Area, you can quickly struggle to stay alive. Or New York City, I'm sure, is extremely expensive. So if you're not making $80,000 a year in a major urban environment, yeah, it's not enough for some people. Work is good for your mental health. Also, sometimes I think it is better to get up and do something than lay around every day. People should be proud to work. I kind of get that. There's also a lot of jobs that I just think are miserable and hard to be happy to go to and hard to be proud of. But I get what you're saying, because I know people that retired and stopped working and their lives just didn't go anywhere. They just didn't really have any hopes or dreams, and they just kind of ate and slept and didn't do anything, and their soul was kind of crushed because they felt like they didn't have much purpose in life, and they struggled to find a reason to work or to do anything, because they felt like they didn't really have much skills. And there's certain people that take a lot of purpose and meaning whenever they find a job they are comfortable with. And I think that can be a good thing for some, but also jobs can be really soul crushing for others. I can think of tons of people that are like, man, this job just ruins everything. It stresses me out. I get nervous, and I feel like I can't relax, and I can't do the things I want to do. And there's all these places I want to see and hobbies I want to pursue. So it's a complicated subject, work. So I'm not either one way or the other. I'm not on the side of no one should have to work, and in the future we should just have free money for everyone and no one has to do anything. I don't think that would be good for everybody's mental health. But I also don't think everyone having to work forever and always having some job or some purpose to fill, or that's not good either. It's a moderation balance. You got to find a good way of finding purpose and drive and contributing to the world and having something of value, but simultaneously having time to yourself to relax and travel and meet new people. So that's what a lot of life is, trying to figure out that battle. I think people are sometimes going to go into their 80s and 90s and not know how to healthfully balance that, figuring out how much is work, how much work is too much work, and how much downtime is too much downtime, to a point you feel like a zombie because you're just not doing anything with your life. It's a tough subject, and I think it's kind of silly to act like there's a one-size-fits-all, like the government should work this way because that's how people are. It's like, people are so different. There's so much variety. Like S63 Tech is saying, my wife works in a call center. It's hard for sometimes. I suppose it's having a good work-life balance. Yeah, and that's tricky. There's a lot of jobs, and my wife does something similar to that. It's not exactly a call center, but it's something that sometimes they don't let you have a good work-life balance. Certain jobs that you find that you need to pay the bills with, they're like, oh no, we need you working 40 hours a week, and you can only have 2 weeks of vacation time a year. that's hard because there's not another job you can find that pays that good, but also it's mentally draining and exhausting, and you feel like you can't live like that for years at a time. It's just, it crushes you to feel like you're not living life and you're just enslaved to this mindless corporation. So I get that too. That's why I kind of look at those and hope that they can be a stepping stone to help you find your true passion. And if you can make money at your passion, that's just the most beautiful thing in the world that I would highly encourage. That's why I almost don't think high school should exist, because I feel like after 8th grade, you need to start finding a specialized pursuit that you want to go down. I basically think teenagers and kids should find out what their passion is and find a way to make a living at something that they're passionate about as soon as possible. Like, don't waste time on that. Finding out what you want to do for a living. Not just like, well, I enjoy playing video games, I want to find a way to play video games for a living. Not bigger than that. Finding something that you know there's a position for, that there's people hiring for, and trying to pave your own path of success there. Get that at a young age, because you don't want to get into tens of thousands of dollars of student debt trying to figure out what you want to do, because that's not a great way to start life, in a massive amount of debt, and you still got to pay rent, and you still got to pay bills and that kind of thing. Yeah. S63 says he works in the entertainment business, and it's long, hard hours, but I enjoy every second of it. Well, good. I'm glad you found that. I don't think I'll ever stop working. I get really antsy. Like, I feel like I'm going to grow up as a new Jay Leno and continue to work throughout retirement. Like, that man is making millions from projects, and I'm like surprised he's got he's old. But you notice that with actors and stuff. They got millions and millions of dollars, but they keep working. They've got enough money. That's not the problem. It's because they want to feel like they have purpose and value. It's even when you have tons of money, you can still feel like you're not contributing, or you're not doing what you want to do. And it's an interesting subject, probably better for Taylosive Talks, but I got to get going here. So I do appreciate the bits and the Twitch Primes. For a reminder, in case anyone's forgotten, I will be switching to YouTube live streams next month. I'll be on Twitch for the rest of July. I made a video called Taylosive Tech Updates, if you're curious why I'm making the transition. But anyway, I do appreciate the subject, and I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day. Take care, all. Bye-bye.